Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
What are the best ways to grow more grass and maximize profitability in your operation? We've got advice from some leading cattle producers, as well as the experts from Corteva Agriscience.
And now, a special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen with host Kevin Oxner.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Oxner. Thanks for joining us. Grass is an essential and low-cost feed source, and no matter what part of the country you call home, if you have cattle, the value of improving your forage is absolutely clear. Those producers who manage their forage resources well also maximize their profit potential. So today, we're focusing on some key strategies that'll improve your grass with insights from a great panel of experts. We're coming to you today from Yon Family Farms here in South Carolina. Kevin Yon and his family are our hosts today. And Kevin, thanks so much for allowing us to come to your beautiful place. We appreciate being here.
Thank you for being here.
Tell us just a little bit about your operation and the role forages play in your operation.
Here at Yon Family Farms, we're a registered Angus seed stock operation. We're in the west central part of South Carolina on the ridge, and forages are the backbone of our operation. Lots of times we say we're cattle ranchers or cattle farmers, but if we're really honest with ourselves, we're really grass farmers, and we're using our Angus cattle here behind us to harvest our crop. So it's very important. Grass is very important to us, and a crop that we think needs management, and we always want to do better at that.
And we're going to be talking to you a little bit more about that. Also joining us from Oklahoma is Mike Weeks. Mike, you and your family ranch down in Oklahoma. Tell us a little bit about your operation and the role forages play for you.
Yep, my brother and I manage a commercial cow-calf herd in southeastern Oklahoma. Like Kevin, we depend upon forage-based diets a lot in order to utilize the best profits out of our cattle and growing our cattle and things like that. So it is very essential that we manage the forage right in order to get the best intake and production out of our beef cows.
Fantastic. And with us also Damon Palmer from Corteva Agriscience. Damon, you talk to a lot of people, South Carolina, Oklahoma, all over the country. What are you hearing as we enter this grazing season for 2019?
Well, it's great to be here in South Carolina and really appreciate Kevin's hospitality. What we're hearing across the country as we talk to producers really is based in optimism. I think everybody is ready to get out of that long, cold winter that everybody experienced. And definitely our hearts, thoughts, and prayers go out to those folks that were impacted in the Midwest by the flooding and the snow that they experienced. So heartfelt prayers go out to them. But just a lot of optimism really based on good moisture that many across the country have experienced. And so cattle producers are feeling pretty good right now.
That's great news. And I want to visit just a little bit about with our two ranchers here about forage production itself. And what are some of the things that you do to maximize the forage resources in your operation? Kevin, let's start with you.
You know, I don't think there's any one management technique that we use that will maximize it, but I think it's more of a systems approach. It's fertility, it's weed control, it's for us it's grazing management. So I think there are a lot of those management practices that we can do that all come together that will help us be more successful in our forage program.
And Mike, what would you add from an Oklahoma perspective?
Much like Kevin, our system is set up similar to theirs. We are very adamant about soil fertility, making sure soil testing. We try to do that on a 3-year basis. Weed control plays a very crucial role into that. So that is a top priority for us. And basically just keeping the pastures healthy, keeping them not grazing too short, doing some rotational grazing and things like that, just to help to kind of keep the forage ahead.
You know, there's certainly some geographical and climate differences between Oklahoma and South Carolina. I'm curious, Mike, what are some of the challenges you face in Oklahoma as it relates to managing forage?
Mother Nature is always a big factor, plays in that. you worry about your temperature. We always hope for an early spring. Sometimes that doesn't come around. So we have to adjust our grazing patterns based upon those particular factors. Rain has been a big issue. We've had plenty of rain since October. We've been extremely wet. We hope that it continues on throughout the spring and early summer so that we can grow and plenty of forage. But those are the biggest factors. I mean, your weed control is always going to be a big issue in it because, utilizing the moisture and the fertility of the soil, if you've got the weeds out there, they're going to be competing with our desirable plants and grasses that we're wanting to graze. So that's going to be a big factor in it.
Kevin, what would you add? Some key challenges that you face here in South Carolina?
I think our challenges are fairly similar, whatever region or part of the country we're from, where, Mother Nature pushes back sometimes, and it seems like the harder we push against her, she pushes a little harder back. But, rainfall, temperature, insects, weeds are all challenges, but there again, we've got technology that helps us better today than we had 50 years ago or 100 years ago that would help us do a better job. And here in the Southeast, one of our advantages is a long growing season. So I think it's very important to cattle ranchers in this part of the world to utilize that and take advantage of that. So I think that's the advantage that we have, and then all the many different forages that we can grow, both cool season and warm season perennials, and cool season and warm season annuals.
I have to tell you, to that end, I'm a little envious standing in this ankle-deep green grass right now, because I guarantee you we don't have that back where I'm from. Damon, I want to ask you a question. Sometimes people think of forage as, hey, if I have a little extra money or if the markets are good, I'll go ahead and spend some money on improving some forages or managing some weeds or so forth. Why do you believe it's so critically important to make this a top priority, regardless of how markets look or the economic situation appears?
Well, ranchers really have a lot to manage, and so as they look at capital investment across their operation, they've got tough decisions to make. But I think Kevin said something earlier that really brought it home and talked about managing the land and really farming grass. And you look at pastures and you look at rangeland, it's the largest asset from a value standpoint that a rancher has. And so when you choose to invest in pasture land improvement, that's really it's an investment that's going to provide a return both short-term as well as long-term. So it should be at the top of the list, in that decision-making process with regards to capital.
Fantastic, and we're going to be talking about some of those investments we can make. And if you'd like to have more information about improving your forage, Corteva Agriscience, or any of our discussion topics today, a great resource is the website rangeandpasture.com. Still to come on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll hear more about Corteva's commitment to the cattle industry and learn about some of their products that can make a real difference in your operation. Stay with us. We'll have more right after this.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Grazon Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
Saddle up and make your way to Denver, Colorado for the 2019 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting. This is your chance to stay up to date on beef industry trends and policies. Meet with industry leaders and your fellow cattlemen and women. Plus, you'll get insights on hot topics at the Issues Forums. Mark your calendar for the 2019 Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting, July 29th to August 1st in Denver. Details at ncba.org.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, as we hear from beef producers and experts with Corteva Agriscience about the value of grass and forage resources. Now, some of you at home may not be as familiar with the Corteva name. Here's a closer look.
Your land is more than a business. It's a heritage that has been passed down from those who tended it before you, by those who shaped it, changed it, and cared for it. Your land has a legacy, one that you carry on, but also one you build on. At Corteva Agriscience Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont, we are the stewards of a lasting legacy. We have a responsibility to Dow AgroSciences to maintain the relationships and trust they built, and to build upon those foundations, to help you care for your land, to provide innovations that help you protect the hard work and investment you've poured into it, to help you build a legacy that can be passed on for generations to come. Corteva Agriscience.
We're back with Damon Palmer, and joining us as well is Scott Flynn, a field scientist from Corteva. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Damon, I want to start with you. Your name may have changed, but your commitment to the beef industry has not. Why is it so important for Corteva to invest in the beef industry?
Well, along with the new name comes, I think, a deeper focus on agriculture with Corteva. So Corteva is a result of bringing together three industry-leading companies with Pioneer Seed Company, Dow AgroSciences, and DuPont Crop Protection. And within those three companies, we're totally focused on agriculture now. Beef and the rancher is a big part of that. And Heritage Dow AgroSciences had been serving ranchers for over 50 years. So a lot of our focus and investment on the ranching community really goes back to our heritage, but is firmly rooted on the needs of the future. And we know that ranchers and those managing the land continue to have unmet needs, and it's our commitment to work with them to help steward their land.
So Scott, what excites you the most about working for Corteva?
I think one of the things that excites me the most is our robust pipeline. Being an R&D and working with chemistries in the field, I get a lot of first looks at things that are in our pipeline. And we have a very robust pipeline right now that's going to drive the future of this business. So I'm extremely excited about that and very, very hopeful. The other thing that I'm excited about is that our dedicated local sales force, they get up every morning and the first thing on their mind is the cattle producer, the forage producer, the livestock industry in general. And so when you've got that kind of commitment in the sales force, it really makes bringing these products to market just a wonderful experience. So that whole thing excites me with Corteva.
You mentioned pipeline, 3 new products in the last 3 years. What can you tell us about them?
Well, the first product that we launched was actually in December, and it was a product called Mesiview, and it has become the market standard in prickly pear cactus control in the southwestern United States. And before, where we're seeing burn down of cactus in 1 year to 2 years, Mesiview is bringing that same level of activity within months now. And so that's really exciting for us. Cattle producers have not seen that level of activity. The other is something that's coming down the pipe in a couple of years, and it's going to be a new product that will give selective broadleaf weed control in our pastures, but protect our white clover and also our annual Espadiza. And so we think that's going to be a big game changer. One of the big barricades to getting in and treating pastures for weed control is that we lose our clover component with a lot of our current products. And then the third is a product that we'll be launching next year, and it is a product called DuraCore. And DuraCore combines the power of aminopyrrolid, which is a chemistry we've been working with now for over 15 years, with a new molecule called Rinsecore. And it broadens the spectrum of activity much more than what we have with our current product, flagship product, Grazon Next. And so we're really excited about DuraCore as well.
What else can you tell us about DuraCore?
DuraCore, it's going to have more than 140 weeds listed on the label, wow, which is going to make it one of the broadest labels out there. It's going to start picking up species that we haven't been able to pick up before with Grazon Next, and it's going to be a much lower use rate. The other thing that really excites me about it is a combination of two molecules that are considered reduced risk herbicides by the EPA. So we're really focusing in on environmental health when it comes to these products, and we're continuing to drive that. And DuraCore is the next link in the chain.
Well, it's certainly nice to see your continued commitment to the range and pasture business, even now that you have a new organization, and we appreciate that in the beef cattle industry. Now, if you'd like more information about improving your forage, a great resource is the website rangeandpasture.com. And isn't it time you joined NCBA to be a part of the fight to protect the interests of cattle producers all across the country? Becoming a member is easy to do. Just call 1-866-233-3872, or you can visit the website ncba.org. And now we welcome back Kevin Yon and Mike Weeks alongside Scott Flynn. And Mike, I want to start with you. How important is it to you as a producer to be working with an organization that has such a strong commitment and strong focus to helping you be better stewards of your land and your resources?
I think it's very important in the beef community. It's not just producers. It's companies like Corteva that come on with us and provide us the tools, the resources to make our ranches more profitable and better, giving us the tools and set forth on our goals that we have for each individual ranch to make our places sustainable for the future.
And Kevin, what's your perspective as you think about organizations like Corteva in terms of the kind of support they provide to the beef industry and their willingness to help us tell the beef industry's great story?
I think it's always rewarding when we get to do business with companies like Corteva Agriscience that truly have a commitment to our industry, and not just to our industry, but to our individual operations, that truly care if we're successful or not. So whether it's their support to local and state cattlemen's associations or to universities or to programs like the Environmental Stewardship Award, we thank them for their partnership and their help in helping us be more successful.
And Scott, let's talk about weather for just a minute. We mentioned earlier in the show, so many people have dealt with such a wet winter and spring. What are some of the unique challenges producers face because of all this wet weather that we've experienced?
Well, wet weather, it poses several challenges. And I think last year we saw that a lot of the U.S. was getting above, or the eastern part of the U.S. was receiving above average rainfall, while the Midwest, certain parts of the Midwest, were seeing drought. And those two scenarios there, they kind of create a perfect storm for weeds to invade our pastures. When you have a dry fall, especially we have cool season grass pastures, you don't get that repair, you don't get that root growth, you don't get the tillering to fill in those gaps. And then you follow that with a wet spring where you have waterlogged soils where you still are inhibiting root growth. Also, with a lot of these cloudy, cool days, what we're seeing is that plants are trying to expand their leaves to intercept as much light as possible, and we're losing our root growth at this point. So I think going into to this spring, we have to be very cognizant of what's going on, not only above ground, but below ground. Good fertility programs are going to be really key to getting these pastures on point early this year and getting production started off right.
Let's talk weeds for just a minute. Are there particular weeds or weed species that we should be more concerned about in a particularly wet year like this year?
I think you're going to have to be more concerned about a lot of the annual weeds this spring. With some of these pastures not having the ability to repair themselves, you're going to start seeing bare areas become infested with certain broadleaf plants, and those annuals are probably going to be one of the first to take advantage of that. So to me, when I'm walking across the pasture and I'm seeing these bare ground patches throughout the field and understanding how waterlogged our soils are, I think what we're looking at is a forage stand that's not going to be as competitive, and it's going to allow those bare areas to be infested with broadleaf weeds.
Kevin, do you struggle with any kind of particular weeds here in South Carolina?
Yeah, we have our share of weeds, especially spring's coming and summer's coming, and we'll be battling those annual weeds. Weeds such as pigweed, dog fennel, horse nettle, thistle, and then some of the woody species.
And Mike, how does that compare to the weed issues that you wrestle with down in Oklahoma?
Kind of along the same lines. We'll do a lot of ragweed, pigweed, ironweed, some dock, and some nightshade are kind of the biggest common things that we have, and some brushy invasive species also, and so we'll start treating those here in the next couple months.
Kevin, we were talking this morning before we got started, all the things that you all are doing right now, from managing pastures and beginning to put up feed and breeding females and so forth. So how do you prioritize pasture management in and among all the other spring chores that you have to deal with?
You know, I think sometimes as managers, we may not see it as a priority or see it as something that's really urgent. But I think if we're good managers, we'll see what's coming and know that, you know, a good forage stand is what feeds our cattle and is what will keep us in business. I think we've got to look at the calendar and walk and get out in the pastures and see what's happening and try to do it as timely as we can.
And Mike, how do you and your operation make certain that forage management and pasture management doesn't get left behind in and amongst everything else you have to do?
We prioritize that as one of our high priorities, simply for the fact that of growing the forage and stockpiling forage for winter feed. That's high up on our list. Getting the fertility right in the soil, getting those weeds controlled, because they're going to be competing for the same nutrients and moisture that our desirable plants are. So it's a high priority in our case.
Well, it's a great reminder to make certain we all keep first things first, and forage has to be one of those high priority items. Thank you guys for your perspective. Still ahead on NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll dig deeper into the dollars and cents of why producers should invest in their pastures and rangeland. Stay with us. We'll have more right after this.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Graze On Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
The elements can be relentless. Make sure they have respiratory protection to match.
Today, we're talking with a group of experts on ways to improve the use of forage in a cattle operation. And Damon, let's start with a very basic question, and that is, why should we even worry about controlling weeds in the first place?
Well, it really comes down to the one simple answer of you're maximizing your forages. And, you know, as we travel across the country and our local experts talk to ranchers, you know, pastures are in a lot of different situations. So you may be reclaiming a pasture, you may have a very well managed pasture where you're treating annual weeds. But at the end of the day, it comes down to maximizing the grass that you're growing in either one of those situations. So if your pastures are in great shape, those annual weeds are really the first step to a larger decline. So it's important, whether you're reclaiming or an annual treatment, to make sure that you're managing it well.
You know, Kevin said something earlier in the show about really cattle ranchers are grass farmers first. And why do you believe it's so important to think of pasture-based beef production more as a crop operation?
Well, I think it's a very insightful comment from somebody that's doing a great job, and we can see that here. At the end of the day, I think someone that's raising cattle, managing pasture, is doing the same thing that a crop producer is doing. And very rarely do you hear a crop producer that is skipping soil sampling, not fertilizing, not putting a herbicide on. And they're doing that because they're maximizing their grain production, their oilseed production off an acre. And when you think about what a rancher's doing with their pasture, at the core, they're doing the same thing, and they need to manage some of those same variables and aspects on the land.
So Scott, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of losses producers can experience when they don't control weeds properly?
So yeah, we lose forage production in several ways because of weed pressure. One is just competition for resources, and what we found at the simplest level, it's usually a minimum of a pound, but more often than not it goes well over a pound of forage lost for every pound of weeds we allow to remain in our field. The other way we tend to lose production is through the number of acres that we have that are grazable. We have certain weeds out there that create kind of a no grazing zone around and under them, and they tend to repulse animals from those areas, and so we end up putting more pressure on our better parts of our field, which in turn turns them into weedy parts later on in the season or even in the next year. And then the other way we tend to lose forage from weed production is through mowing. We have producers that'll mow 2, maybe 3 times a season to keep weeds under control. And what we have to remember is every time we remove an inch of forage, we may be removing anywhere from 100 to 400 pounds of forage from that pasture. So we're removing grazable forage.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you, Damon, I mean, why don't we just mow weeds when we have an issue in particular places? Why is that a bad idea?
Well, I think Scott did a great job of talking about what we actually lose. So I think it's very easy for a producer to look out, they see the tractor in the barn, they see some weeds. It seems like a very good management technique, but you do have the forage loss. Plus, when you look at the actual cost of operating that machine and time, as well as the machine and labor, oftentimes it's the same amount as a herbicide application. And I think the long-term benefits of a good herbicide application can actually extend beyond just that single year.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk, Scott, about what are the benefits of producers being able to manage things well and actually grow more forage.
We recently did a survey with the American Forage and Grassland Council, where we surveyed the members, and we asked them what are the practices, the forage-based practices that tend to be the best return on investment. And the one that floated to the top was extending the grazing season. And I think that's one thing you have to remember when we're implementing a good weed control program. If we're shifting those resources back to the forage base in that field and we're increasing our forage production, we're going to start shaving off those days that we're feeding hay. And what we're looking at is somewhere around $1 a head per day that we can save for every day that we graze and we don't have to feed hay. So that's probably one of the biggest benefits is just extending that grazing season. And then we have those folks that just want to increase their carrying capacity. I tell producers this all the time: the cheapest acre of pasture that you'll ever buy will be the acre that you regain once you implement a good weed control program. So those people that are looking for more acres, sometimes they need to look internally because they can increase their herd size on their own property.
Without buying any more land.
Without buying any more land.
Well, let's talk to the guys who make their living at this, Mike and Kevin. I mean, what does an ample forage supply mean to you, Mike?
Going into stockpiling for winter forage, carrying capacity is another big option. We can look at if we have ample forage, our stocking rates, put more pounds of beef per acre is going to put more dollars in our pocket. So that's a really big factor for us as far as going through the winter. A lot of times we can supplement with some protein, make them utilize that forage there to where we're not actually having to take everything to them. So cuts back on the labor aspect of that, and also, I mean, it utilizes your pastures and the land that you have available.
Kevin, what are the benefits of having ample forage in your operation?
I think the cattle depend on us to have a very complete diet, and we like to do that with forage. And it's always a goal of ours to have something grazable for our cattle every day of the year. It might not always be something lush and green such as this, but it could be through stockpile forages. So I think extending the grazing season is a wonderful opportunity. A higher carrying capacity, if it fits our operation, is also an opportunity. So it all starts with what we provide, and it's kind of like we can get back out of it what we put in it.
Mm-hmm. And so one last question to you both. What are the kinds of things that good forage allow you to do from a management and decision-making process? I mean, what options does it give you? What benefits do you get from having the luxury of having some options from a forage standpoint?
Back to, again, carrying capacity, that's a big option for us. We have to make a decision on, are we going to bring more cattle in if we have ample forage? If we don't have the moisture and don't have that forage available to us, then we've got to make that management decision at that point in time. Supplementation of our winter needs, that's a big determining factor. Same way there, if you have plenty, it's going to make a management decision in order to feed a protein supplement to make them utilize it. Whereas if we don't have that, then we're going to have to supplement them a little bit more. So,
anything you would add, Kevin?
I think we have to look at the economic characteristics. Carrying more cattle on a given acre. We all sell pounds, so pounds of beef produced per acre. And then we can never forget about reproduction, or what's the breed up on these females. And we found that a high quality forage can certainly help with that.
Well, thank you guys for your insight. There's no doubt about it that we are first and foremost grass farmers, and we just tend to harvest this grass with those beasts as opposed to the tractors that other farmers use to harvest their crops. Now remember, if you'd like more information about any of these discussion topics today, you can visit the website rangeandpasture.com. We'll have more on Corteva Agriscience and their work with cattle producers right after this. Stay with us.
At Case IH, we believe it's our job to provide you with solutions. That's why our Farmall and Maxim tractors, as well as our tools and attachments, are designed with you in mind. From mowing to baling to loading and more, we're here to help turn your to-dos into to-dones. At Case IH, we'll keep your days running smoothly with equipment that's durable, versatile, and highly efficient. No wonder farmers are more loyal to Case IH than any other brand. Visit your local dealer or go to caseih.com/livestock for more.
When you're raising cattle, you might have to solve a dozen problems before you even get through your first cup of coffee. Still, one thing we don't ever have to worry about is implant performance.
We use Synvex Swingrass. It's the only true 200-day trim-blown acetate implant for grazing steers and heifers.
And you can actually drink this before it gets cold. Whew, that'll put hair on your chest.
We're focusing today on ways to improve the use of forage in a cattle operation. So how does someone evaluate their pastures to know which products to buy? Here's Scott Flynn in the field with some helpful advice.
From year to year, we're usually not shocked to see certain weeds pop up again and again. But I think every spring, most producers, cattle producers, can walk out into their pastures and they get this warm, fuzzy feeling when they look out across the field and they see everything that's green. But when you start digging in between grass plants and looking down at what's coming up, you'll see that there are quite a few weeds popping up in your pasture during that time, even though everything looks nice and green. Now the problem is, a field like this that has some patches of annual weeds that have kind of taken over, these patches are eventually going to die out here in a few weeks when we get into the later parts of spring, early parts of summer. And that's great. But the problem is they're going to be replaced with another broadleaf weed more than likely, or even a weedy grass. And so there's several options here. One, you can do absolutely nothing. And in that case, we let nature take its course. And what we find ourselves doing is coming back with a mower a few weeks later and trying to get control of weeds or suppress weeds that way. The other option is to go the cheap route with a herbicide, something like a 2,4-D. And you go in and spray that into a field and we burn down the weeds. But the thing is, we just open up that soil to allow other broadleaf weeds to come into our pasture. And then the third option is to come in with a good soil residual herbicide like Grazon Next HL that's actually going to hold those weeds back for a period of time, several weeks, and it's going to give us the time we need to backfill those bare spots with grasses. Add a little soil fertility on it, and we just make things happen that much faster. So at the end of the day, the best bang for our buck in a pasture early spring is to get on those weeds as soon as possible, get them under control, and start shifting that competitive advantage back to our forage grass species.
And Scott joins us once again along with Mike Weeks. So Scott, what role does fertility play in pasture management?
Kevin, previously I mentioned that we did a survey. We had done a survey with the American Forage and Grassland Council with their members. And while extended grazing was in the top 5, soil fertility was actually the #1 response from producers on return on investment, the best return on investment. We think of our soil nutrients as being part of the building blocks that build our forage base. And fertility is so important for getting that production up, for keeping those pastures healthy, and for them to allow them to repair themselves in a timely manner, so that when we do get bare areas in the field, we can fill in those with a vigorous growing forage.
So are you saying that fertility is more important than weed management, or vice versa?
Oh, it's hard to say one's better than the other. If we look at a scenario where we put weed control first, we clean out the weeds, but we don't give the pasture enough nutrients to repair itself and to fill in those spaces. On the other side, if we go in and fertilize a weedy pasture, we're shifting a lot of those resources to the weeds. So I really like to see producers incorporate both on their operation, a good weed control program and good fertility, because that's where the best bang for your buck comes with both of those investments.
And if I'm not mistaken, Corteva has a product that allows you to do both at the same time, correct?
We actually have 2 products right now available on the market, Chaparral and Graze On Next, that through supplemental labeling will allow you to treat dry fertilizer with those products, spread that dry fertilizer on your pasture, and get weed control and your fertility improved in one application.
Now, Mike, you've used some impregnated fertilizer, is that correct?
We have, yes, sir.
Tell us when you started using that, a little bit about your experience.
We started using it. It was the first year that it was labeled for use in Oklahoma. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. We had actually taken a place that we had just bought, hadn't had anything done to it, and to my knowledge, in years. If anything new, you're always a little bit skeptical. We tried it, and extremely great results. I think it's second to none as far as weed control and fertility issues, all in one pass.
So what can producers expect in terms of benefits of using impregnated fertilizer?
Well, when we combine those two together and we get that really good vigorous growth, we have enough residual with Graze On Next and Chaparral to hold those weeds back and allow that grass to jump out ahead, so we fill in those bare spots. So the biggest benefit is that we control the weeds, we shift that competitive advantage to the forage, and then we let the forage overtake those problematic weed species.
And do you see any additional benefits beyond that, just in terms of time or labor or anything else, Mike?
Yeah, that's a big thing, is the labor issue of it. You know, in today's fast-paced world, everyone doesn't have the time to get all these jobs done. Where you're getting 2 jobs in one done in one pass, you're taking care of those 2 issues. So that the labor standpoint has been in time. In our country, you know, the wind blows and trying to put out chemical and things like that. That window is very narrow. Sure. Whereas with it's impregnated on the fertilizer, it opens up that window and gives you an ample time to get something done and get your chemical out and get those weeds controlled.
Well, Mike, it certainly sounds like this impregnated product is a great fit in your operation in Oklahoma. And Scott, I just ask you, if some of our viewers are interested in utilizing this product, where all is it available?
Well, Kevin, it's available in more than 20 states via a supplemental label. And if you want to find out if it's available in your state, I suggest that you contact your local territory manager with Corteva or your local retailer.
Now, to learn more about the benefits of impregnated fertilizer and other Corteva products, visit the website rangeandpasture.com. Still ahead, we'll examine the Environmental Stewardship Awards program and the value those winners bring to the beef cattle industry. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Did you know that Prefert makes over 1,000 different farm, ranch, and rodeo items? And now, thanks to Prefert Direct, it's easier than ever before to get access to every item Prefert makes delivered direct to your local dealer. For more information about Prefert Direct, visit us at prefert.com. Prefert, America's #1 name in farm, ranch, and rodeo.
When a new calf hits the ground, his clock starts ticking. A belly full of colostrum gives him his best odds, but if he doesn't get any, his time starts running out. That's when you grab a bag of Oxford Ag Colostrum in their patented feeding system. Fill them with warm water, shake it to mix, feed it with a tube or nipple, and you are done. No bucket, no bottle, no mess, and right on time. Get yours at oxfordag.com. Costs less than a dead calf.
Raising cattle, growing grass, and environmental stewardship all go together. That's evident here at Yon Family Farms, where the family is a previous national winner of the Environmental Stewardship Award. Let's take a closer look at their family operation.
In the ridge country of South Carolina, you'll find a family of 5 hard at work growing their purebred Angus seed stock enterprise. Kevin and Lydia Yon worked together managing cattle on another operation before founding Yon Family Farms in 1996.
This is a family operation. It's an operation that my wife and I have had the privilege to start together, so we're the first generation on this farm, and we get the opportunity to raise our children on this operation, and they're a big help to us every day.
We started with 100 Angus cows that we purchased from the farm that we managed. And we moved here 12 years ago and have expanded and improved. When we first moved to our farm, it was a former peach orchard with a tenant house and 2 small fenced pastures.
It's pretty amazing that they came here 12 years ago and got all this done in that short amount of time with nobody else doing it before them. They just started it all from scratch.
Now, Yon Family Farms includes 1,500 acres of pasture, hay, and cropland. They've added fencing, cattle working areas, and a feeding area for their bulls.
We try to take extra good care of our land because, of course, as being grass farmers, if we don't take good care of our soil, we can't grow good grass and in turn won't have the ability to produce forage for our cattle.
We're a big fan of managed intensive grazing. We take big pastures and make them into smaller pastures with temporary electric fencing. We found that it really helps us in managing the grass, which in turn helps us to manage the cattle.
Facing drought now, they have the benefit of irrigated pasture to help manage their forage. To protect their soil, the Yons seed their grasses using no-till, and they work closely with NRCS to tackle projects that protect their land and water.
Through NRCS programs such as EQIP, we've used cost sharing to fence out ponds and stream banks.
They're very progressive. They're willing to try new items such as the fencing off the ponds and the streams, putting in the heavy use areas in the water troughs, and working with us on anything and everything that they have.
We put in concrete watering areas in all of our pastures. I think we've put in over 30. Around each of those concrete troughs, there would be filter fabric, sand, clay, and then gravel on top. And we go back in and refurbish those as needed because there are a lot of cattle drinking at one time around the areas.
In fact, the Yons have installed more than 34,000 square feet of heavy use areas to benefit their cattle and the land. Perhaps most impressive, the family placed 100 of their acres into the Grassland Reserve Program.
It permanently keeps it as grassland, and you can't build up there, and it will always be related to agriculture.
I want this to stay a farm. I don't want it to develop.
I think it's great that we don't have to worry about that land ever being something other than grassland.
Though their family has been farming and raising cattle on this land for just 12 years, for the Yons, stewardship is a commitment for the long term.
We are honored to have this privilege and feel blessed to get to wake up every day and take care of the land, but it's also a responsibility to do all that we can to make it better.
You know, you're never done improving the land. We see something every day that we think we need to work on or wonder how we can make that better, and you know, we'll keep doing it as long as the good Lord allows us to. So yeah, we really are living our dream out.
And joining us once again is Damon Palmer and Kevin Yon, along with his wife Lydia. And Lydia, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
I want to begin with a question to you. What has winning the Environmental Stewardship Award meant to your family?
You know, I think it was really cool that when we were selected as the winner, our children were really young, and we started our operation from scratch. So they actually helped do a lot of the practices and were involved from the ground up. You know, with the very things that were recognized for the award, the watering areas, fencing out streams and ditches, and providing clean areas for cattle to drink from, and grazing management and all of that. They were part of it, grew up doing it. So the fact that there was an award that actually recognized our family for doing what so many cattlemen across the country do every day and recognize the importance of good stewardship, I think it really made us feel confident in that it was important to do those things, and it is the right thing to do, not just because of the award, obviously, but because it's the right thing to do for the environment and for the cattle and for the land every day, because we certainly want to pass it on to the next generation in better shape than we found it. So I think it was really cool for our family to have started the operation from scratch, and to continue to do the right things for the environment, on a daily basis.
And now all these years later, all three of your children are back here actually actively involved in the operation. That's got to be really rewarding as well.
It is. It certainly is.
And Kevin, what do you think the Environmental Stewardship Award means to the beef industry? Why is it so important for our industry?
I think its importance lies that it maybe showcases operations from different parts of the country that do what so many do, and that's just taking care of what's God has provided with, natural resources, and using what they have to get out what helps their operation be more successful. So I think it just showcases what families all across this country are doing to make their individual farms and ranches better and more sustainable, and leaving them far better than they found them.
And Lydia, has winning the award given you unique opportunities to share the environmental story with others?
Sure, it has. I mean, we've been contacted by a number of publications, not just in the ag industry, but other avenues as well through the media, to share our story and to speak to the general public about, what we do raising cattle and where food comes from. So it's certainly been gratifying to get to share that story.
And Damon, of course, Corteva continues to be such a strong advocate and longtime supporter of the Environmental Stewardship Award program. Why is that so important for Corteva to maintain its involvement and support of this kind of program?
Well, through our Heritage Agriscience company, we've been a sponsor of the ESAP program for over 20 years. And as we've put Corteva together with the three heritage companies, we spent a lot of time developing the new company purpose, because it truly is a new company focused on agriculture. And that purpose that we rally around every day is to enrich the lives of those who produce and those who consume, ensuring progress for generations to come. And so when you look at that company purpose that we've got at Corteva, there's a very, very tight alignment with the ESAP program. And ESAP is just one way that we can return back to cattle producers and ranchers. They entrust Corteva and our products, they invest in us, and this is just one way, along with others, that we can give back and really help tell the good story of what ranchers are doing around the country.
It is a great program, and the winners like the Yons and so many others are great examples of the kind of stewards that so many cattlemen and cattlewomen are all across the country, and we certainly appreciate your support of that program.
It's a great investment.
Now, if you'd like to learn more about the Environmental Stewardship Award winners, see photos or videos, or even learn how to nominate someone for the award, visit the website environmentalstewardship.org. We'll be back with some final insights on increasing forage value right after this. Stay with us.
How's your production on pasture? Are profits down? Are weight gains down? What are you going to do about it? Do something cost-effective. Do something that will make a difference. To add the first and proven leader in feed-through hornfly control to your cattle rations, ask for it by name, Alticid IGR.
Welcome back to this special edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we come to you from Yon Family Farms in South Carolina. As we conclude our program today, I'd like to give each one of our guests an opportunity to share some final thoughts with our viewers. And Mike, let's start with you.
Thank you, Kevin. Biggest thing about it, what we take from it is just our experience with proper soil fertility and weed management. It's really worked great in our operation and kind of helped us to move to the next level. So if people can kind of take something from that, I think it would benefit them in the long run.
Fantastic. Scott, what would you add?
I would just like to say that our most important asset is what's under our feet, and it's renewable. We can sustain it. We pass it along to every generation, to each generation. And if we take care of the land, if we take care of our forage base, it's going to take care of our cattle.
Very good. Kevin, thank you for letting us come here. What would you share with our viewers?
I think most of us would agree that raising cattle can be very rewarding and quite fun, but I think that we'll also find with a very high quality forage management system that it can be just as rewarding, and the two actually go hand in hand and helped us to be more profitable and sustainable.
And Damon, what would you share with our viewers?
Well, I'd just like to reaffirm our commitment at Corteva to the cattle industry and really helping producers maximize their forage. We realize there are no two ranches that are the same across the country, and through our dedicated research and development efforts and also our local experts, we're there and we're committed to help them make the most of their forages.
Well, thank you for your strong support of our entire industry and our TV show. This has been a very educational program, and we appreciate the insight all of you bring to that. Thanks. Now remember, the full range of Corteva Agriscience products can be suited to fit nearly any rangeland or pasture. For help in selecting the best product for your individual situation and management goals, you can visit rangeandpasture.com. Well, that's our time for this week. Our thanks once again to the team at Corteva Agriscience, as well as to Mike Weeks and Kevin Yon and his family for hosting us. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.